My name is Noel Hidalgo. This is today's agenda. We're going to get started promptly here at 9. At 9:10, we're going to get into a little bit of a presentation. By 9:40, we hope to get to your questions and answers. Your questions, their answers. There are little pieces of paper that we're asking you to fill out so that way we can comb through and proficiently ask those questions. Please do ask questions on those paper. We will not be reading out any statements. So today is super exciting for the fact that it has been years in the making. Last month, I said New Yorkers deserve government technology that meets them where they are. And we have argued for a decade that the city should be building that capacity in-house. We don't want the city to be renting technical talent. I mean, that's kind of like where we are in this grand era of compute. We need to have the capability, we need to have the intellect, we need to have the capacity inside of city government to use these tools to work our way through the future. The pit crew is that argument becoming a payroll line, and click to cancel is that first test of whether or not it will work. It will work. And just to kind of like paint a picture of like how this is decades in the making, in 2013, the Beta NYC community met in rooms like this, and we wrote the People's Roadmap to a Digital New York City, calling for in-house technical teams. And then in 2018, in this very room, we actually had the city of Amsterdam, who was kind of seconded to OTI, talking about how they were building in-house technical teams to address digital services. And then between then and now, we've had 15 briefings talking about how digital services can actually bring us about. In 2021, we had Catherine Benjamin, the deputy CTO for digital services, make that argument in the middle of the crisis that we were then experiencing. For those of you, do you remember how painful it was to try to figure out where to get a COVID shot? Yeah. You remember? Right. So, no, not that many of you, not caffeinated enough. I mean, I remember it very vividly. I was stringing together some really unusual bedfellows to make the very clear argument that like digital services needed to be in-house. And yet we had a commissioner then who thought that they knew how to build the website better than the people inside a city government designing digital services. In November of last year, this community helped gather a bunch of different ideas that we presented to the mayor-elect. And then in December, we had another BetaBagels where 5 civic technologists brought that vision collectively. And so today we are bringing you BetaBagels 2016 to bring you here. For those of you who have come to Beta NYC events in the past, you know this lovely slide. For those of you who don't know, you are here. And here is the politically designated land of New York City, which is the home to the Lenape people, the Lenape-Hoking, who were violently displaced as a result of European settler colonialism. And over 400 years, the Lenape they have been displaced for over the course of 400 years. The Lenape are diasporic people who remain closely connected to this land and are its rightful stewards. New York City is home to over 115,000 intertribal Native American, First Nation, and Indigenous peoples, and it is the largest population of any city on Turtle Island. Some have been born here with family that goes back to generations. Others have come to New York City to find what they couldn't find anywhere else. Each one has contributed to the rich and diverse culture that is New York City's urban Native community today. And Beta NYC pays respect to all Native peoples, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout the Indigenous diaspora. We offer our care and gratitude to those Indigenous peoples of many nations who continue to act as stewards to the land to this day, and we encourage you to learn more about these vibrant communities among us. We also pay respects to the indentured servants and the enslaved people who brought us to these lands to build a city that we care for today. And we give thanks to our ancestral mothers who fought for and continue to fight for universal suffrage and human rights. Our fight for the future is not siloed. Equality, equity, and opportunity are all interconnected. In Beta NYC, our mission is to make sure that at least New Yorkers see and have access to data and technology to improve their communities. We're a small team of 6 full-time staff. Our mission is kind of grand in that great vision of the universe. Um, the three problems that we're seeking to address are: one is developing workforce development within CUNY students and civil society. We're building public interest technology services for elected officials and community organizations through our public interest lab and our radars program. And then lastly, through our public programming, which is also digital and data and AI literacy programs for the general public. You are here at BetaBagels, right? Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. All right, making sure. So this is a breakfast series where New Yorkers and civic leaders talk about building public interest technology that makes government more transparent and improves our neighborhood. All are welcome. Beta NYC is a safer place. It is not a finished one. Our social contract is constructive, respectful, and collaborative. Today, we ask you to listen as much as you speak and presume the values of the person next to you. Ask a respectful question. All of our events and our online spaces are governed by our code of conduct. If something goes wrong, tell a Beta NYC staff member or send us an email. And with that, I say welcome. To give you a little further orientation of the place that you're in, I'm going to call up Esther, who's the Director of Policy here at the Manhattan Borough President's Office. Woo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Caroline. I'll say I didn't expect the name to be so big, but there you have it. And my email is right there. Part of what I'll talk about today is really, really wanting for you all to be involved in what we do. So my email is there. Please use it. Please reach out. I'm the Director of Policy in the Office of the Manhattan Borough President, where we all are right now. We have been here for going on 8 or so months since January and are trying to understand what a borough president does. Now, I'm not sure if you all already know what a borough president does. It wasn't so clear to us coming in, but we have a myriad and somewhat ambiguous set of duties. Now, a couple are clear. One is helping to oversee and appoint members of community boards and also members of several other boards. Other boards across the city. That's a really important part of our job. What that means is that we have a very close nexus with these local community grassroots organizations. So with CBOs, of course, community boards, block associations, tenant associations, all the like. We have a community affairs team that does a lot of work connecting with those groups and playing a role as one of only 2 elected officials voted to represent the borough of Manhattan, not citywide and not smaller districts, but the borough itself, playing a role with CBOs, with local organizations to advocate on behalf of Manhattanites. Another thing we do is allocate capital dollars through the city budget. This year, you may have seen we did something called the Manhattan Multiplier for Arts and Culture. I'll talk about it for a second because I think it's a really good basis for public-private partnerships, which is, I think, very important to folks in the room. We decided to take our public dollars, of which we had around 40 million, and don't quote me on that, I probably got the number a little wrong, and devote it all to arts and cultural organizations, given the loss of monies from the Trump administration and the importance of just buoying the cultural sector in New York City, which is one of our most important financial sectors and has been known to is suffering in the last few years. But we didn't just devote our dollars. What we did is devote our dollars and then ask those organizations to reach out to private philanthropy, use the government monies as sort of a check mark, an endorsement that this is a legitimate organization and a legitimate product, and then fundraise off of that. And through that, we, I think, raised another $35 million from private philanthropy for these organizations. And I think that is a strong demonstrator of what it is like to marry the public and private sectors. We are a government body. That means we're constrained by rules and regulations and laws that are long and sometimes hard to understand. But we also have access to the various avenues of government that others don't have. And because of those constraints, that also adds some authority to what we do, because we really need to put it through the sieve before we give it our signature. So that adds some authority, that helps the private sector come along. And we also obviously have some reach, just, because we're a bully pulpit. End of the day, Brad is a well-known figure in the borough of Manhattan, and he uses that bully pulpit to advocate on behalf of Manhattanites. So another thing we do is work with Beta NYC. Obviously, they're in our office. This, I think, is another really, really solid example of what it looks like to engage with private sector, nonprofit, philanthropy, etc. They use our space, and in exchange, they help us fix all of our systems, understand technology, understand data, tell us when we're getting something absolutely wrong because it doesn't make sense to analyze 311 data the way we're analyzing it. And that's been an extraordinarily valuable partnership, and we want to continue it. So I'm really glad that OTI is here to talk about what I hope will be like a revolutionary use of government in the near future and can build into something more substantial. I'll close off by saying we are not a mayoral agency, so we are self-contained in a way that's unique for offices in government. And we have a vision of turning our office into a place where public interest, tech, and data work can really thrive. Now, we don't yet have the capacity to do that in a functional and professional way, but I hope with all of you in this room, we could build a process to get there. So if you have some freelance public interest project that you're really excited about, but you don't understand exactly how DSS sends out notifications for the one-shot deal, and that's a really important part of the project, and you don't know how to move forward without it, and you're also missing an important data set that you don't necessarily have access to, or you don't have the contact information for the various agencies that are holding the important pieces for your project, please reach out and we will partner with you, pending the project itself being within our policy priorities. But we'd love to work with you all. So please put my email down, reach out. And with that, I will say thank you to Noel and Beta NYC, and thank you to OTI. We're very excited to see what comes of this.
This is our third borough president that we're working with. So it's really fun to be on this floor, and to continue the great work that Gail started and that Brad is now continuing. I will tell you, the power of the pen is an immense power when it is the borough president writing a very well articulated letter asking for very specific data sets coming from very specific entities. Yes, let's leverage this power. And this former community board member, community board chair, former state senator, now borough president, who has seen all of these things here in this office. So thank you, Caroline. Esther. All right, so now, pit crew. How many of you are excited about this announcement? Okay. Now, how many of you applied to be on the pit crew? No, be honest. I just want to see a round of hands. Okay, good. Okay, but maybe about a third, about half. So today we're joined by two OTI pit crew members, Luke and Suki, and they will start by answering three questions. One, what is the pit crew and why build in-house instead of hiring vendors? Two, how do you decide what to work on and why Click to Cancel was selected first? And three, who is actually on a crew and how can you ship within 12 weeks? Scary, exciting. Luke is the deputy commissioner at OTI and has spent his career building mission-driven tech teams across government, nonprofit, and private sectors. Before joining city government, he led teams at the White House's USDS, Digital Services. How many digital services alumni are in the house? 18F in the house. All right. So we got some Feddies in the house. Sorry, is that offensive? No. And then he mitigated nationwide supply chain stocks and kept millions of people enrolled in Medicare and SNAP after the pandemic. He's excited to be building the pit crew and drive those little race cars in Coney Island and raise New Yorkers' expectations of what government can deliver. Suki is a technologist with a decade of experience building software meant to bring people empowerment and joy. She's most recently spent a few years building an app to help people exercise their rights in digital privacy. And she is thrilled to be serving New Yorkers as part of the pit crew. So I'm going to welcome them up. Which one of you want to?
I'll run first.
Okay, great. So, all right, come on up.
All right, thanks everyone for being here. I'm Luke Farrell. Super excited to get to chat with you all today. I want to focus on answering your questions first and foremost, so we'll be super quick through the slides. But before we get to that, I want to thank Beta NYC for having us, the Manhattan Borough President's Office. It's like such an honor to be welcomed by a group of civic tech folks and community organizers who have worked for decades to make this work possible. And we're definitely standing on the shoulders of a lot of the work that people in this room have done to make sure that we can deliver for New Yorkers. So to jump right in, we're the pit crew, kitschy name, but very serious business that we're up to. So just to lay out our vision, and I think Noel did a great job of laying this out. The point of the pit crew is to raise New Yorkers' expectations of what government can deliver and how it can deliver it, right? And there's two core ways that we do that. It's that it's New Yorker centered, right? So we're building products with New Yorkers at the heart of everything we do, what they need in their everyday lives to live a dignified and delightful life here in New York City. And then second, we're doing it in-house. So like Noel said, unlike the typical way government technology gets built, we're focused on bringing in-house talent as city workers who can actually build and deliver end-to-end through design, development, and actually deployment more quickly and more efficiently in-house as a team. So what does it mean to do kind of New Yorker-centered projects? To Noel's question, a lot of people have been asking, what are we building? What are we working on? So it's kind of three high-level criteria for the kinds of projects that we take on. Obviously, there is an enormous amount of technology work to do in city government. I'm sure you all have ideas for things that should get built. This team is really tactical and focused on a very narrow set of projects. And we sit within OTI, the Office of Technology and Innovation, that has a much broader mandate to do legacy modernization, fixed data centers, and all of that kind of good stuff as well. So the first is public impact. Is there a clear user problem that is well suited for a digital solution that would make people's lives better? Second is alignment. So we need agencies on board. This work does not happen without frontline staff being deeply embedded in the work that we do, with agency commissioners who are excited about using technology to solve problems, and with City Hall behind us, and with existing policy momentum, operational momentum behind these ideas. So we're a technology team, and we need a whole bunch of other teams inside agencies to support us in order to succeed in what we want to build and deliver. And then finally, it's complexity. So is the challenge well suited for a technical solution? There are a lot of problems in city government. Not all of them need technology to solve them. You know, some of them are budget problems. Some of them are staffing problems. Some of them are the way we've written the law. This team is really focused on the ones that can be well suited by an in-house team that can build and deliver something in a relatively well-defined period of time. So there's like a complexity and suitability question involved as well. And last, this is how we build in-house, right? So we have a cross-functional product delivery teams that includes product managers, user researchers, user experience designers, product designers, and software engineers who, again, can build end-to-end. We don't want just an engineering team or just a design team. We want both together working hand in hand from the start of the problem definition all the way to the actual delivery of a solution. Because that's the way we can kind of do things iteratively and make sure that we're delivering the whole solution that someone needs. And I'll say we're housed inside OTI in no small part to leverage the enormous strength of that organization, right? We have an awesome infrastructure team. We have deep experts in procurement, in data across the agency, and we get to lean on their expertise and work very closely with them to make sure that the pit crew is delivering. And then finally, again, we partner super closely with agencies. At the end of the day, agencies are the ones who deliver the services to the end users. Our job is to help them do that the best they can. And I'll go back really briefly just to mention Click to Cancel as an example. We're working super closely with the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. They have consumer advocates on their staff who every day mediate complaints that come in from the public when a company or a landlord or a vendor that they've hired has done them wrong. And those people are people that we learn from every day to understand what does it mean to mediate a complaint? What do you need to be able to do that effectively to get someone a refund? And so we're deeply embedded with them to understand how can we actually build and launch something that helps people easily cancel subscriptions, which I think is a really kind of poignant first project for us. It's about the perverse incentives in the private sector that have created products that are hard to escape from. And we're here on the inside of government to try to make that user experience better for people. And again, we don't want to just build something that is nice or that works. We want to build something exceptional, something that like really raises people's expectations about what we can do. And I think with Suki's help and the whole team, I think we're on track to do that. So tried to be quick. I'm really excited to answer any questions that you guys have. Suki and I have been delighted and honored to get to do this work, and we're excited to share it with you. So.
All right, so for those of you who have questions, we have cards. Please make sure that they get to Naima or Gabby. Let's go ahead and take a seat. Do I grab this microphone? Little punk rock, a little DIY. All New York, all the time. All right. Can you test your microphones just to see you get the tap?
I think it's on now.
All right, great. Let's start with some softballs here. So Suki, we haven't heard from you. Tell us a little bit about your professional journey to come here to OTI.
Yeah, so I cut my teeth in private technology. I was working at Meta when it was a very different place to work. I was actually one of the first members of the news team there, working on identifying misinformation. And after, there's a bit of an echo, so maybe I'll just give that a second.
We may have to slide back.
Yeah. Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, it may also be me.
Great.
Keep going.
Yeah. And in my time there, I sort of became enchanted with two ideas. One is this notion of interoperability. So the idea that maybe incredibly useful data and services should not be confined or siloed to one organization, in particular an organization that's not held accountable to the public in the same mechanism that public institutions are. And second, with the idea of privacy, that we should definitely be responsible stewards of all the data. I think that, it's hard to know. It's a little bit of a Faustian bargain when you give all your data away. Every individual decision doesn't seem like a big deal, but in totality, it creates such a picture of your soul and your essence. And so that's a dangerous thing that we should be responsible with. So I went back to school. I went to MIT and I spent some time in Professor Daniel Lab studying the gap between legislation and how it actually impacts people's lives, particularly with a focus on privacy legislation, the CCPA, and the now 20 state laws across the US. What's the gap between those rights that we have in the legislation and how it actually impacts people in the day-to-day? Because I think most people would agree that a lot of the privacy legislation has primarily created a whole new type of job for compliance professionals, but not necessarily yet changed the way that our relationship with data works. So then went to an innovation lab funded by Consumer Reports to build an app called Permission Slip, which was all about holding companies accountable to how they use data, making it really, really easy to send requests to have it deleted or to opt out of the sale or share of your data. We recently took that up over to Delete Me, so really fans of the work they're doing there as well. And was on sabbatical when I connected with Luke and Maya, who is also helping to start up the Pit Crew. And we talked about just all the wonderful things that we could do to help New York City. And we're excited to be here doing that.
Excellent. So one of the first questions that we have is about service design. So tell me a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about how the role of service design, particularly multi-channel experiences, will be impacting this particular work.
Yeah, so I think in terms of multi-channel experiences, to start there, because I think it's a good example, even on click to cancel, and Suki should talk more to this. New Yorkers approach government in such a variety of ways. And I think the difference from the private sector is we don't get to choose our users, right? We have to serve every single New Yorker who shows up and in every single way that they show up, right? So they might call into 311. They might send an email with their complaint. They might show up to an office with a complaint. And we need to be able to intake all of those different complaints, ingest them effectively, and then mediate them in an equitable way, regardless of what channel they came through. And so I think service design is like the critical skill at the start and through the development of our work, because we need to sit down with users and understand what their expectations are when they're interacting with government, understand what channel works best for them, and then think through how do we optimize that channel to maximally serve their needs, and to also, on the service design side, on the back of the house, make sure that the agency can actually absorb those complaints effectively and be able to mediate them in a way that is fast, equitable, successful, and maximally serves the user need that's being described. And so I think service design is like the core of what our design team and our engineering team is expected to be able to do, is to dissect a problem from the start all the way through to delivery, to make sure that we are building an experience that works end to end, and not just, flashy things on a screen, but actually solving the core of the challenge that's in front of us.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I'll just highlight two things. So I think the first is the importance of meeting people where they are when we talk about multi-channel experiences and well-designed services. So that means people have a muscle of calling 311 and talking to 311 when there's a variety of complaints. And so we really want to make sure we're nailing those entry points that people are already using and not just proliferating new ones. And maybe we even have big dreams that if you just go to Google, we show up. I'm not committing us to anything right now, but we'd also love to meet people where they are, not just in how they think about interacting with government, but how they interact in the day-to-day. And the second is really facing head on the challenge of making something both beautiful and joyful and accessible. So accessibility is not something we will compromise on, but the quality and joy of the experience is not something we want to compromise on either. And so we're hoping that we can strike the right balance between meeting people where they are, making something that works for every single New Yorker, and also changing people's expectations of how software that meets those requirements can feel to use.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the Alta Vista of city government. For those of you who don't know what Alta Vista was, it was a search engine back in the early aughts. You remember Yahoo from a hierarchical way of looking at information. When 311 was launched, it was actually called the Alta Vista of city government. So fun little historical. Something that has kind of been frustrating, I will choose my words very carefully, has been a lack of investment in 311's infrastructure, though there has been quiet investment in updating the underlying pinning of 311. 311 is this transformative object that launched in Baltimore. So those of you from Baltimore, thank you for leading the way. 311 is a critical component to creating this kind of digital front door. They have great librarians. Thank you, librarians, for organizing the city's information. What other pieces of information do you see as critical infrastructure to allowing New Yorkers and those people who come to this great city to kind of like what are the other digital front doors that you want to be in? Search engines are one place, social media is another place. What's the role of this AI thing? Like how does the city find its resources into the training models which are currently blocked off?
Yeah, so I won't speak specifically to how the broader agency is going to manage like those other things, because I think that's outside of kind of our laser focus at Pit Crew. But I will say, you mentioned a few of them there in terms of our ability to get the word out about city services is something that I have like really enjoyed so far in this work. So specifically, we have a mayor who's really, and a CTO who are very capable of getting city services in front of people. I think a great failure of governance that I have experienced in my past life was that we built great things and then never told anyone about them, right? And I think that was a huge failure, and that like it felt gauche to talk about good things. And I think it's really, really important. And I think the mayor and the CTO are leading the way here in terms of when we build a great service, our job is not done. Our job is then to get that service in the hands of real working people, however we can. And I think I've been quite inspired by the mayor and the CTO's ability to do that. And I think it's like a huge opportunity for the Pit Crew to lean into that, to make sure that the things that we are building are not just a cool tech thing that we all in this room get to play with or use in our day-to-day lives, but that everyone in New York has access to that, regardless of the language they speak, their tech literacy, where they live, what borough they're in. And so I think there's like a huge, huge opportunity for us to really supercharge that. And we've seen the mayor do that with not just new city services, but existing ones as well. And so I think there's just an enormous amount of upside in our ability to do that and to get services in the hands of people that need them.
Yeah, and to answer your question directly about the way people are engaging in chat, we're definitely being cautious and responsible and just exploring right now how we'll engage with that directly, not burying our heads in the sand about the fact that it is just a different interface through which people are interacting with data and the internet. I think at this stage, if we do our job right, we're going to end up in those models organically, I hope, right? You see a lot of unfortunately, like Reddit is a really big input, right, to those channels. So hopefully through like organic optimization of the entry point, we won't have to figure out how we engage with that directly before we can do it responsibly to be reaching people in the interfaces that they're starting to engage with the internet. Yeah.
Just to give you a heads up, the robots.txt file for nyc.gov currently allows for all the major search engines and Meta, but none of the major AI, so OpenAI and Anthropic. So
Add it to the to-do list for sure.
let me know which GitHub repo to file an issue. So speaking about infrastructure, continuing on the conversation of infrastructure, and there's so many questions here, and I apologize for not being able to parse them all. But like, how do you foresee the infrastructure that's being built and managed by the pit crew translating its way into agency operations? Like, how are you also, something that I was on the this transition team, and one of the things that we were advocating for is making sure that the pit crew happens to be the point of the tip of the spear, but making sure that like the rest of the agencies are coming through. So how do you envision making sure that best practices work their way across agencies?
We are going to do two things. First, we are building an agency infrastructure from day one. So we're very well aware that one of the failure modes of this endeavor is that we build technology that no one can maintain. So the second thing I was going to say is we're not going to make the perfect the enemy of the good here. We're focused on the next step. We don't want to, fail by coming in and immediately saying, hey, here's this new thing, maintain a code base that's completely divergent from what you've been doing. The agencies have a big job and they're handling it with expertise. And so we want to introduce really strong iterative processes that start realistically from where we're at. So I think click to cancel is a good example where we are, extending the existing agency stack as opposed to introducing a ton of new infrastructure. And also I'll just say we're in a phase of humility and building trust. So we want to first deliver an infrastructure that agencies have. Maybe a year or two from now, we've done our job and we can start to introduce wholesale new things that people feel comfortable with. But yeah, I think we know that if we aren't building something that is maintainable, if it looks great in the first few months, it will fail a year down the road. So we're not interested in that. We're interested in building things that help people in a very durable way.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I want to add too, like, we think Pit Crew very much is a model that we want, that its success will help build momentum inside agencies in New York City. I mean, maybe in other cities across the country, that this model is working. And so we want to be really clear when we're showing up to an agency that the work that we're doing should inspire their internal IT team to maybe take a different approach. We want to advocate to OMB and other places that this approach works and that other agencies who might want to copy the model, we can give them the evidence and the demonstration that this actually works. And so I think in addition to building things that are maintainable and us doing our work really well, I think the point of the picker is also in part to model what a different vision of city government technology could look like, and then spread that model to other agencies, other parts of OTI, other cities across the country. So I think principally our first and foremost goal is to make sure that this model succeeds, and then to share that model as widely as we can so that others can kind of take it up, morph it, use it in the way that works best for them, so that agencies can do this work on their own, right? Because ideally the pit crew is the tip of the spear here, and then other agencies can do this work over the long term is our hope.
And what's the most salient sales pitch to the different agencies that you're hearing right now?
I think there's I think there's two things. One is the quality that I think the team of in-house talent is able to produce. we are able to build and iterate with users from start to finish without needing to rely on a 9-month procurement process up at the front that then delivers something after another year of development that the agency might not have seen in the intervening 12 months, right? And so I think there's like a quality bar that we are able to constantly demonstrate to agencies that I think is really, really compelling and something that we hold ourselves to a very high standard to deliver on. The second, I think, is on cost and time savings. So it helps that the pit crew shows up and the agency doesn't need to pay for it. So that's certainly helpful. But I think also there is a meaningful cost savings that we do want to benchmark going forward in terms of this team and the cost of having city workers build this relative to outsourcing it the entire project end to end. I think we hypothesize that and I think there's good evidence to suggest that that will reduce the cost of software development over the long term when you spend more on talent and people than you do on contractors and external software. And then the time saving, I think, is related as well. So we're trying to build stuff in 3 months. That's super ambitious for city government and really challenging. I think we're going to be able to do it. In part, we're ahead of what a traditional process would look like because we would still be in the procurement phase right now. And instead, we have engineers who are writing lines of code today.
Yeah, and I'll even just underscore the word iterative there, right? So I think a really big difference is just moving from a waterfall model of software development where policy experts and subject matter experts feel burdened with creating a perfect spec. Nobody can do that. We know that that's just not how good software gets built. And so I do think we're finding that once people realize, oh, we can build software without having every single thing figured out, we can do it in collaboration. It does relieve some of the burden on subject matter experts to know everything right from day one, because it's just an impossible thing to do.
There's an agency in this building that once put out a press release talking about how their whole team had been certified to do agile software development. But they continue to do waterfall development for years. No, separate agency. This was many years ago. And like I remember the cost benefit analysis in 2009 when the state Senate was moving to Drupal and an open source stack. And like the cost benefit analysis was actually, let's just make sure that we're using our tax dollars more efficiently by being able to scale and use open source code and use open practices. So to that end, like there's two questions that are kind of like in this wonderful stack of papers that I will have to scan and send you, and you'll be able to reach out to these individuals directly. But what is going to be the role of modern technology tools like open source places like GitHub, or like what is the role of open source in this vision of 21st century public interest tech?
Yeah, I mean, I think the principal goal of the pit crew is to deliver exceptional products. I think the consequence, the downstream consequence of doing that is that we're going to need to adopt for the first time in some instances in city government different ways of working and of delivery. And open source is something we're really interested in. I think, I know you've referenced like MCPs and other things. These are ideas that we are really interested in. And because they will help us fulfill the mandate of delivering exceptional work and exceptional products to the public. And so I think our team, I'm really optimistic that in the wake of this team doing awesome work, we will be able to enable these kind of new modes of working in city government for the first time. I will say we're still city government, so we have like a lot of hurdles and barriers in front of us to do all of that work. I think Suki and I aspire to do a lot of that really hard work for the first time in some instances. But I think our goal is to kind of steamroll those barriers as much as we can in service of delivering exceptional experiences for users. And I'm really optimistic that we'll be able to enable all sorts of different ways of working that currently are not the status quo. But again, we are city government, so it is our job to figure out how to do that responsibly, how to do it thoughtfully. It might take us a little time, but we will figure it out, and I'm optimistic.
2016 is when the city's last GitHub policy was written. Someone inside OTI sent me the directory of where it is still publicly available, though it is not on the OTI website anymore. Yeah. So, how OTI has addressed this in the past has been a contracting vessel. I mean, like the main role of has been about getting these technology contracts out the door and then being able to rent the tech talent. So understanding that you're in this transitional moment, what is going to be the role of the private sector to kind of use the tools of the past to get you to the future that you want for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think the first of all, there's still a role for contracting widely at OTI. OTI is a 1,500-person organization, and so like the picker is a very small team with a very specific set of mandate and goals inside of a much larger organization that serves an enormous number of functions, right? From 911 and 311 to open data and all sorts of other critical functions. And so I think there is still a role for kind of the agency to operate in some of the ways it has been. I think the pit crew, specifically to your point, is I think one small example, which is slightly beside what you were saying, is we're also getting support from the philanthropic sector as well, right? So the Rockefeller Foundation has contributed to the creation of the pit crew. And I think that's an example of how we can have non-government partners support the work that's going on and kind of magnify the impact of the work that's going on through philanthropic investment. But I also think there are ways that we can consider activating the civic tech community, which I think are really important. But in terms of how we're going to do private contracting or private sector engagement, I think the pit crew is less focused on that in general.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is that, as we mentioned a bit earlier, our efforts are synergistic with efforts going on across OTI. And one of those efforts that OTI is taking on is to fix procurement and try to create shorter software procurement timelines. And so I do think that in an ideal world, there is a lot of technology and SaaS technology coming out of the private sector that we can leverage, right? Like really high quality APIs or data sets that we want to be smart about because we don't want to end up in a locked in situation or do it the way that it's been done in the past. But I do think that procurement processes are a barrier often to building the best product because you can do all your desk research to understand like this is the best data set out there, this is the best short-term solution. But if you can't access it on a quick timeline, then you're going to have to ship a subpar product. So I think we're really working closely with OTI, and to the extent that they'll be able to shorten procurement timelines, it will go a long way in having a relationship with the private sector that doesn't look like renting talent, but still leverages all the incredible advances coming out.
That's great. Speaking, let's get to some of the nuts and bolts about getting into the pit crew. So, like, what's the hiring timeline? The civil service kind of restrictions. Paint the glorious picture of the bureaucracy that individuals will have to face to you have now 4,000 applicants.
Yeah, that's right at the moment. So a few things. First, we've been like overwhelmed by the response of folks who are interested in joining, which I think is just a testament to the moment that we're in that people really see an enormous opportunity to make the lives of their neighbors and their families and their fellow New Yorkers better by joining city government. And like that, I think is an enormous triumph for all of us. And so I'm just like, we've been really overwhelmed by the response, by the quality of folks applying as well, right? Enormous amount of talent that is interested in applying their skills to serve the city. And I've just been like so heartened by that so far. So we have received around 4,000 applications in our first few weeks. We are working the process as quickly and as thoughtfully as possible. So a few things that we're doing, for example, is we plan to respond to every candidate, right? And so that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it's something that we're committed to doing because we know that right now it sucks for people to be applying to black hole job portals or you throw your resume and never hear back. I think we've all been there. And so I think we're trying to take a much more intentional approach to hiring than maybe in the past in just terms of respecting and honoring the fact that people went through the process of applying in the first place. So that's number one. Number two, we are city government. So in the way that I was describing us doing things differently and hopefully in our wake, things will be better for other teams. We are trying to move the hiring process as fast as it's ever been moved before in city government, which is pretty fast. But we're also committed to doing like an extremely equitable and really fair process. And so those two things are in tension, right? That we need to move really fast. And we also want to consider every single candidate as equally and as thoughtfully as we can. And so that requires a rigorous process that we've set up. We're actively doing interviews now, actively reviewing resumes at the moment. We're trying to hire as quickly as possible, as quickly as OMB will let us. And I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do that.
And if agencies have needs, because you still have four projects that need to be selected, how can they help you expedite the hiring process if that's a possibility?
City Hall's been super helpful. I think, we have a lot of momentum behind the pit crew, so I think we have what we need to get people through the process. And so agencies certainly have been reaching out. We can talk about this a little bit more if it's interesting, but there's an enormous number of projects that have been kind of thrown our way at this point, that we're also working through as a team. Not every project that a city agency might have is a perfect fit, as you might imagine. And so a lot of it is a lot of work for us to think through, what is a real user problem that we can solve with technology as well. So agencies, we've got an enormous amount of incoming as well.
And we're running close to time here. You have to leave here at 11. Is that right? No, 10:30. Okay, so we can do the networking at 10. So that means we have 10 more minutes. So a few things. How are you going through that selection process? Like, we've heard from the public applying side. How many agencies are like, what is the process to submit a project to OTI for the pit crew? And then how are you doing the evaluation?
Yeah, so right now, the way it's operating is we have kind of done an open call broadly. Agencies know where to find us and have been kind of submitting ideas to us in a relatively informal way. We've also been coaching deputy mayors teams in terms of like, this is what a pit crew project looks like. And for them to look across their portfolios to understand, in the housing portfolio, here are the things that are shaped appropriately for a technology solution and for an in-house team to go build the thing. Right? There's, data centers that light on fire in New York City. Occasionally, that's not the perfect shape for us. But I think we're kind of coaching deputy mayors teams, agencies, senior leadership around like, this is when you should call us. And this is the kind of project that works well for us, kind of the way that we described up at the top.
I want to say one thing actually on the previous question with hiring, which is please, please, please apply to the pit crew. We're going through the applications as best we can, but also please, please, please apply to city government generally. If you are excited about the work that the pit crew is doing, we would love to see you with an agency that we're collaborating with, and we would love to see you with an OTI more broadly. So I think if all of the strong tech talent interested in doing good civic work is concentrated in the pit crew, it's less effective for everybody. And there's a lot of cool work happening in the agencies. And I think it's just right now under this administration with this commitment that is demonstrated through the pit crew as an example, it's just a time when we're hoping to transform the way technology is built more broadly. And you don't have to be right on the pit crew to be a part of it. We need good technologists and allies throughout the government.
So let's talk about some dreams here. 2 years from now, well, what does your definition of success look like, and what would you want the other kind of projects? You don't have to talk about specific projects, but like, give us the flavor or the aroma of like where the pit crew will have been cooking.
Yeah, I think we like to operate in the dream state. So this is a good question. I think a few years from now, what we are really hopeful for is that we will have meaningfully delivered city services that touch millions of New Yorkers and that have raised folks' expectations of what city government can deliver and how quickly it can deliver it. And so, for example, inside housing or inside childcare, inside of consumer and worker protection, inside the city services that folks interact with every day, that's exactly where we want to be, right? We want to be deploying the front line of technology that folks are going to meaningfully interact with in their day-to-day lives. They might not always know that it was a pit crew project, right? We're open to doing things behind the scenes that make the front doors feel better and work better. That's very much part of our mandate. But I do think what we really, really hope is that we're able to deliver services that are so much better than they currently are today. And that they're not just better experiences, but that we're actually moving the metrics that matter. The amount of money in people's pockets, the affordability and the enrollment in core social services, right? Like we're not interested in just building really slick experiences. We're interested in the underlying metrics that really move the needle for people's real lives. So that's whether that's getting people money back through click to cancel or, and that might be a couple $100, but we're really focused on delivering the wins to working people that will actually make a difference in their lives, not just the kind of slick surfaces on top. Though those are important too. And then the second, I think, is instigating much broader change beyond the pit crew. To the earlier question you had, which is, are there agency teams that are starting to pick up the tools or the models that we've built, right? Are there other efforts in other cities or where this model seems to be working well enough where they might want to adopt it themselves? And so I think that there's like a broader change instigation where we start to get the second order effects of the pit crew, 2-3 years from now, where hopefully we've demonstrated that, instead of renting technology, actually building it ourselves in an accountable and sovereign way really is the path forward for the future of government. And I mean, one other side note, like everyone's talking about how the cost of software development is going down and approaching zero. Like government should capture the efficiencies there and not pay the same price for those efficiencies being made in the private sector. And so I think there is like a real cost savings too, and a time savings that we want to realize as a team for the city as well. And so we have big hopes. We have all sorts of crazy ideas of things that are on our wish list. We have to build our way there, right? We have to prove in small ways and then in a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger until we're doing really big swings. But I think we're really optimistic about our ability to do that over the next couple of months and years.
I'm thinking I've been watching a lot of Monsters Inc. For those of you who have toddlers. I'm imagining, the moment where Sully and all the monsters are just kind of like slowly walking. It's that, the astronaut, that hero moment of everybody kind of like walking down the hall, being like, we're the pit crew, we're showing up, we're doing it. And then, like standing down the hallway is like all the other service design teams and, like everyone else in the city that's like, yay, you finally showed up at the table. Like you were able to address the things that we've struggled to address for so many years. I'm like, I'm really interested in understanding what becomes of like the service design studio, which really paved the way in 2016. How do we, because that was something that we were advocating. I have to use my appropriate language, office language here, tooth and nail to have those experts listen to in a moment of crisis when all New Yorkers needed government to work for them and not against them. You have that, you have the, you have so many different iterative teams that have fought these battles, and how do all those teams come together and like not see you as just the young smart bucks walking down the hall, but yeah, what's that future vision 2 years from now where everybody's coming together and being like, we finally address these issues?
Yeah. So for starters, I think in your analogy, I'm almost certainly Mike Wazowski. But I think I think we're building on a movement and a group of existing civil servants inside city government who have been doing this work for decades, right? And I think a failure mode of past civic tech or government technology efforts like USDS in its first iteration or 18F was that new kids on the block, we're going to come, bust open your agency and go fix it, right? And that is not the intention here at all. I think we're like really, really cognizant of the fact that we need to partner super deeply, not just with agencies, but with these other organizations that have been doing the work, whether it's, the New York City Economic Opportunity Office, their product development team is exceptional. The Service Design Studio is exceptional. And actually, I think for us, it's really helpful to lean on them, right? To learn from their experiences, the mistakes they've made, the things they built that we can borrow, copy their homework where possible, right? And work alongside them and bring them into the work early and often so that we can benefit from their deep expertise and their knowledge. And so I think there is no version of this where we succeed without doing that. Like we have to do that in order for any of this to work. And so the intention of the picker is not for it to be kind of a new organization that is going to, run roughshod over these existing organizations or take precedent over them. It's very much our job to work with them, build with them, and learn from them as we do this work.
Fork, branch, commit, pull requests, take in comments. Yeah. file issues. Sorry, I've just been living in Claude Code for the last month or so, so a lot of GitHub requests. All right, closing comments, statements, questions, aspirations, dreams, frustrations that you want to publicly disclose before we get to the thank yous and close everything out, and then get to the networking session.
Well, just something I was thinking about was the analogy of the pit crew. And, it's ultimately pit crews are supportive. And I think that's what we want to be. We want to be an accelerant to the existing things going on, right? So to your point earlier about the other teams that exist, I think that's why I'm like, just come work for city government generally, because I think we're really symbolic of this administration's desire to accelerate the work that is happening and just to do it better. And so that's what we're trying to do, not trying to break things open and say, hey, this new shiny thing is what everyone should direct attention to, but instead say, how do we elevate and accelerate the important work already going on? So yeah, excited to be a part of this and to work with all of you to make it happen.
Great. All right. Well, I'm going to get to the little closing comments. Let's give them a round of applause here. Did the remote stop working? What's okay, cool. So government for the people, by the people, without corruption. Like, just for those of you who had a frustrating 4 years. Anyway, for those of you who are not here and watching this remotely, for those of you who are here, our amazing associates board is organizing a Civic Tech Summer Showcase on Thursday, August 20th. From 5:45 to 7:30, we're leveraging some of our greatest civic infrastructure that our city has, which is we're going to host this in Brooklyn Heights Public Library. Members of the Beta Builders community will be hosting demos and showing what they've actually built. Maps, tools, dashboards, data sets presented for the people by the people who made them. This is going to be free and available to all. beta.nyc/events. We're changing how our community's online ecosystem kind of represents itself. So we no longer have this free Slack, but we do have these free events that are going to be organized by the community. So show up to our events and you will get invites to our Discord server. By the way, Discord is currently blocked by OTI. Just another thing I will file a GitHub issue request for. That being said, we're going to be hosting more showcases organized by our associate board. The team is also, we are how many weeks away from City Camp? 4 weeks away from our other big tentpole conversation. How many of you have gone to an unconference before? Okay, those of us with gray hair remember. For those of us who have not gone to an unconference, imagine just kind of like the coolest place with like the most positive energy, a lot of aspirational ideas, and sometimes very frustrating issues all coming together to kind of like walk into a room like this, and then we get little post-it notes and we put them up and we assign a room and a time slot, and then we go talk about it, and then we meet with our neighbors, we see who else is in the room and start thinking about how do we further these issues along. City Camp is something that was instrumental in building Beta NYC as a community and also help articulate these particular issues. So September 19th, Saturday at Hunter College, which is we're having it here in Manhattan. We have a really amazing 3 floors. No, wait. 4 sessions, 3 floors, 2 meals, 1 amazing day. I had to work on that. And so right now we've got early bird tickets. We're going to be launching scholarships. We're looking for volunteers. It's part of our community opportunity to just to kind of talk about these issues. If you've got projects, you've got issues, bring them. We are moving our online community to Discord. We have our weekly newsletter that's continuing to rock out. We've also launched an events and a donation newsletter that's out there to keeping you aware of all of these things. So beta.nyc/links or beta.nyc/events, and you will find where we're at. And with that, huge huge thank yous to the Beta NYC team, Andrew, Gabby, Naima, Duncan, and Jordan for being here and helping put this together. Our associate board, Annette, Antoinette, Ariana, David, Dimitri, Jackie, James, Jamal, Jordan, Kelly, Monisha, Shreyas, Saraba, and Tina, and Zana. Thank you for all of your volunteer labor, and the OTI team for being here, Luke and Suki, Gloria, Andres, Ray, for all being here and supporting your colleagues. And with that, end of show. Thank you.